Today, I'm going to talk to you about how I taught my daughter, who supposedly has an IQ of 54 and limited language skills, how I taught her to read. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't teach her to read with phonics. I know that is committing heresy as a reading specialist. I know the science of reading and children with dyslexia, and everybody's saying you have to use sequential phonics, and that's how you teach them to read. Had I relied on phonics to teach my daughter to read, she would have never learned to read. Let me explain. Shalia has minimal hearing impairment. She has a kind of language disorder that she doesn't really understand if then. Like if a word ends in E, then the A is long. That her brain does not do. I had to look at how her brain learns in order to figure out how to teach her best. And this is the number one tip with all of your students is you really need to figure out how these students learn best and what engages them. For Shalia, if she wasn't engaged, she would not pay attention and she would not be interested in the lesson. I labeled all the items in her room: book, lamp, dresser, table. You get it. I had them on Post-it cards and just had them taped to the items in her room. Every morning when I woke her up, I went, Shalia, this is a book, this is a picture, this is a flower. And I just went through all those words with her every morning faithfully. I had another set of those cards already made, and I knew she loved to play Go Fish, and I knew she loved to do memory match. That's where we started. I didn't start with b, b, it would have been lost on her. Okay. I get to phonics with her eventually, but first I have to engage her and get her wanting to read. Engagement and motivation are two of the most important aspects of teaching a child to read that we don't talk about enough in literacy programs. I was in a conversation with a mom that I had met at a meeting, and she was talking to me about how sad she was that her adult son never learned to read. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder how they tried to teach him. If they tried to teach him with phonics, that that probably wasn't going to be the way this young man was going to learn to read. When I hear parents say their child just can't learn to read, I doubt it a little bit because Shalia had zeros on every kind of testing, that they do. It was all zeros, but she had 25% on visual memory. So I ran with that. And in between all this too, I had a mini trampoline in my house. I had a gym ball. So she'd sit on the gym ball and I'd bounce her and I'd go C-A-T cat. I'd be silly, and then we'd jump on the trampoline and we go C-A-T cat. And we just moved with it. And in the other videos, I have rollerball spelling. I have her spelling using a pool noodle and a ball hanging from the ceiling. So go look at some of those other videos where I show you some ways that I taught her to read, what really works. And in my reading room as a reading teacher, kids would come by in the hallway and say, how do I get to go to your room? Because it was so fun. I had all these different movement stations and I had the words posted and they would do their arrows and say their words and they would, jump. I had tape on the floor and they jump and say their words. It was a very vestibular, inner ear processing, movement, sensory, tactile, kinesthetic experience. Because I knew with Shalia, I had to bring everything to the party. Her brain wasn't doing what a typical brain did. She had microcephaly, small head, a small brain. So I had to use the body to extend the mind. I hired a private tutor to get her going on reading recovery because at the time we were using that in our schools and our K2 teacher was making great progress. And again, reading recovery's gotten slammed. Oh no, you can't teach them the 3Q system. It doesn't work. It doesn't teach our kids to read. For Shalia, it was fabulous. She matched pictures to the words. It was high cueing, which she really needed. It wasn't all phonics as phonics based. There's still phonics in reading recovery, but it didn't lead with that. It led with what story, and the stories and the little books were really engaging. And that really helped and got her going. And then I started into like second, third grade. I started creating her own stories, writing them myself and sending them to school. And the stories were about funny things like we had a bird called Izzy, and her name, she was a cockatiel. So I write cockatiel stories and funny stories. And I knew that they were stories Shalia would like, using words that I knew she knew, and then sending a little word list along with it and some activities for her to do to extend. And the word lists I use are the high frequency words. Like these words are in 70% of the English language. By gosh, get her to learn those words because you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And then I also, when we went on trips, took pictures and I put the pictures in a book and I put sentences. Shalia is on her bike. Shalia is in France. Shalia is wherever. And she loved looking at those pictures. We would read the sentences together, and she just was so engaged because she loved the pictures of herself and her family. So she could relate. So relatedness, these kids have to have stories that are personal to them that they can relate to and understand. So we're doing all of that. Meanwhile, I fly to Philadelphia because I hear about a new reading program called RAVO. And it's specifically designed for students with a language-based learning disability and rapid naming issues, like how quickly they can read colored circles or how quickly they can say numbers. She had very slow rapid naming, and she had a severe language-based learning disability. So I hop on a plane, single parent, two little kids, meet my mom from Florida in Pennsylvania so she could watch the kids. And I got certified to be a trainer. And they said, well, you can get one kit for $1,200, or you can get a kit for 5 students for, I don't know, $1,600. And I said, give me the kit for 5 because I'm going to bring it back to her school. So as a reading specialist, I was just volunteering at her school. Of course, I wasn't a reading specialist for her school, but I brought it back and shared it with a special ed teacher. And I said, let's choose Shalia and 4 other students, and I will come in and I'll do these sessions like twice a week, and then I'll train an aide to do it as well. So that's what we did. It was so successful that at the end, I think 2 of the students exited special ed, and Shalia and the other 2 students made great progress. So that's kind of been the journey. And then from there, I just kept working with her, but she was reading at about a 3rd grade level, let's say. So that grade level was enough for her to be able to communicate with me. And about 8th grade, she lost her ability to speak. And because of her microcephaly, it was like her brain said, I can't do all of this stuff, so something's got to go. And so the speech did go. But she was really happy with texting. And she texts me, oh my goodness, all the time. And so I'm so grateful that that Chile and I were able to learn to read together. So like these are her texts that she texts me. Some of them are very long. I wish I would have taught her to put periods in. I think I did, but she didn't get it. She didn't get like this is a sentence and this is where it ends. So they all are run-on sentences. But she's able to tell me what she needs. She's living in her own apartment. She's able to tell me when her nightlight burns out or whatever it is that she needs to feel safer. So it's fantastic. So the moral of this video is phonics isn't the end all be all. It's a part of the whole. You have to have motivation, engagement. You have to have experiences that help the brain learn the way the brain likes to learn. You have to bring in high frequency words. You have to bring in stories that they relate to that are personalized to them. So all of this has to happen. And it's not just, I'm going to sit down with you with this random phonics books with these random words and half the time they're nonsense words, which would really confuse Shalia. Like, wait, what is that? That's not, her brain wouldn't even recognize that that's not a word. She'd start using that word thinking it's a word. So I want to encourage you, if you're working with a struggling reader, if you're a professional in schools, or if you're a parent at home, and phonics isn't working, give it up for a while. You can come back to it later. Give it up. Go whole language, which I know is heresy in the world of literacy right now. But I'm going to tell you, a whole generation of baby boomers learn to read with whole language. See Dick run, run Dick run. We don't have a whole generation of illiterate people. So why is that? And we learn to read with whole language. When you're working with a child with cognitive issues, lower IQ, hearing problems. My daughter had tubes in her ears, so she had minimal hearing impairment. So I knew phonics wasn't going to work for that reason. She can't really hear those sounds because of the hearing issues she had. So all of these things combined, you just have to be really creative and figure out how you're going to teach this child to read. And I think more children with special needs can read than we think if we broaden the toolbox with which we're using to teach children to read. If you're interested in learning more, I do have a course. In the course, we talk about 9 different types of readers and what types of activities will help them. And all the activities you can integrate any kind of reading program you're using. It doesn't matter. If you want to take the course, you can reach out to theramoves.com and see when the next one is being scheduled. Thanks for all you do for your children, and I'll catch you in the next video.